भूतगणादिसेवितम् कभित्तजम्बोफलसारभक्षितम् उमासुतम् शोकविनाशकारणम् नमामि विघ्नेश्वर पादपङ्कजम् नमामि विघ्नेश्वर पादपङ्कजम्.
Thank you for being here today. Biological science is one of the broadest subjects in the world, and its research encompasses diverse fields. In the recent years, there has been an increase in the number of students opting for biological research abroad in countries like US, Germany, France, etc. We have gathered here to attend the last webinar entitled Career Options in Biological Research Abroad on the international series Biotechnology Present and Future Scenario, jointly organized by the Department of Biotechnology and IQAC Sri College Kaladi under the SMART scheme. Dear participants, please ensure your microphone is muted and video is turned off during the time of presentation. Now, we are moving on to the welcome address, and I call upon Mrs. Febike John, Assistant Professor, Department of Biotechnology, to deliver the welcome address. Over to you, ma'am.
Good morning, everyone. Respected Principal, Dr. A. Suresh, Resource Person, Dr. SMIJA KURAIN, IQAC Coordinator, Dr. Priti Nair, dear faculties and my dear students. It's my immense pleasure to welcome all of you to the final talk of the webinar series, Biotechnology, Present and Future Scenario, jointly organized by the Department of Biotechnology and IQAC. It is indeed a proud moment for me that the speaker of the day, Dr. SMIJA KURAIN, Postdoctoral Research Associate, University of Exeter, UK, is a friend and classmate of mine during my postgraduate studies at the University of Dundee in Scotland. She is not only a good friend, but a motivator and above all a great personality too. Nowadays, most students dream of going abroad for research or work after their UG or PG. But the fact is that they do not have enough understanding of it. I would say our today's speaker, Dr. SMIJA KURAIN, is the right person to address your concerns and queries about studying or working abroad. Today, she will be delivering a talk on the topic Career Options in Biological Research Abroad. So participants kindly make this webinar more useful. On behalf of the management, principal and staff of Sri Sankara College, I welcome Dr. SMIJA to this session. Let me welcome Dr. A. Suresh, our principal who has been a strong pillar in all the activities initiated by the department. Next, I would like to welcome Dr. Priti Nair, IQAC coordinator, who is constant supporter of us to this webinar. Last but not least, I welcome the faculty, students, and all the participants who are here to attend the talk. Thank you all.
Thank you, ma'am. Next, I welcome our IQAC coordinator, Dr. Priti Nair, who has always been a strong supporter of us throughout the webinar series to give the felicitation. Over to you, ma'am.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. Respected resource person of the day, Dr. SMIJA KURAIN, dear faculty members, my dear students. It's really heartening to note that the Department of Biotechnology is conducting a series of webinars, which is useful not for the student community, which focuses not just on academics, but also it is a webinar which also tries to see that students are properly placed. So if you go through the list of the topics that have been covered in this webinar series, we see that Some of the topics have been dedicated purely to academics, and this webinar, the present webinar, is going to focus on career options. Now, just as the Master of Ceremony and Dr. Febi mentioned, today's the present generation, we find there is a shift of students from Kerala, from India to abroad. They go in search of placements, higher studies, they go abroad. And what we find is many of them are confused as to which university to go to, which course to take up, and so forth. And I'm sure that this present webinar, Career Options in Biological Research Abroad, will give the students a proper direction as to what to opt and where to opt. And hence, I request the students to make maximum use of what is being put forth by the resource person. Thank you very much for giving me this opportunity, and I wish this webinar all the very best. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Now it's time to start our technical session. After the presentation, you can clear your queries by using the chat box facility. Participants, kindly make sure that your audio is muted and video is turned off. Our speaker for today is Dr. SMIJA Mariam Kurian, Postdoctoral Research Associate, Department of Biosciences, University of Exeter. I invite Ms. Madangi Verma, second-year biotechnology student, to introduce and invite the resource person. Madangi, please.
Thank you, Varada. I'm very glad to introduce our today's speaker, Dr. SMIJA Mariam Kurian. Dr. SMIJA Mariam Kurian is a postdoctoral research associate at University of Exeter, UK, who has made significant contributions in the field of cell and molecular biology. She had her graduation from CMS College and post-graduation from University of Abertay, Dundee. She did her PhD in fungal cell and molecular biology at University of Manchester, England. Her major areas of research are fungal cell and molecular biology. She started her career as a research technician, fungal cell biology group at University of Edinburgh, UK in 2010, and presently she is a postdoctoral research associate in University of Exeter, UK. She also served as a lecturer in cell and molecular biology, CMS College, Kerala, during the period from 2016 to 2017, and also worked as a research specialist at Sidra Medicine, Qatar, for the period September 2018 to June 2020. She was a postdoctoral research fellow in Monell Chemical Sciences Center, PA, USA, from June 2020 to December 2020. She has attended numerous international meetings worldwide, and she is an active member of the Biochemical Society and also the British Society for Cell Biology. Her publications and reports include the detailed studies on fungal cell and molecular biology. She has done a number of projects from 2007 and is ongoing with the project about the redox triangle, communication between ER peroxisomes and mitochondria in health and disease. Some of her projects include neural circuits and spatial organization of appetite-related order balance in health and disease, localization and molecular characterization of virulence mechanisms in Phytophthora capsicum, live cell imaging of the early stages of colony development in Fusarium oxysporum in vitro and ex vivo during infection of a human corneal model, geometrical modeling for 3D laser microdissection. Today, Dr. SMIJA Mariam Kurian ma'am is with us to deliver a talk on career options in biological research abroad. On behalf of the Biotechnology Department, Sree Sankara College, Kaladi, with great pleasure, I take this opportunity to invite Dr. SMIJA Mariam Kurian for this session. Over to you, ma'am.
Thank you. Thank you for your kind words, Madangi. And I would like to, first of all, I would like to thank you all for giving me this opportunity. Can you all hear me well?
Yes.
Yeah. So first of all, I would like to thank you all for giving me this great opportunity. I have had the chance to listen to some of the fantastic talks as part of this series before. And I must tell you that the organizers have put a great effort in bringing to you the great people who gave the talk. And I'm nowhere near the expertise of any of those people who have given the talks before me. However, what I could do is to take you through some of the useful notes from my limited experience in research. So shall I start with the presentation? So can you all see my screen now?
Yes, Smija.
Yeah. Okay. So first of all, I'll give a brief bio regarding my experience so far. As I told you, I'm nowhere near the expertise of the great people who gave the talk so far. However, my experience of working in different countries, I think that took the interest in inviting me to this talk series. So I would try to make it interactive with you. Um, you could stop me whenever you want. You could ask questions in between. It's fine with me. If you have any doubts, please note it down, and I can try my best to solve or to answer to your questions. Okay, so my experience in research, it all started from Kerala. I lived in India until 21 years of age. I'm from Kottayam, Kerala. I did my BSc Biotechnology degree in CMS College, Kottayam. I'm from 2005 to 2008. So looking back 10 years back, I was one of the students like you sitting and listening to a talk like this. And then after that, towards the end of my 3-year degree, I decided to go abroad for doing a master's in biotechnology. So during that time, opportunities were limited and we didn't have much research facilities in Kerala then. So I heard from my seniors who had already gone abroad that it would be better if you go abroad for higher studies, especially if you would like to continue as a researcher abroad. And that's why I decided to go abroad for doing a master's. And then I completed my master's from University of Aberdeen in Scotland in 2009. After my master's, as part of the master's degree abroad, you're always asked to do a project, a 3 months research project. So after doing the research project, I had the opportunity to continue as a voluntary project intern in the same institute where I did my master's project. So that was the James Hutton Institute in Dundee. So I worked there voluntarily without getting any payment, just to gain experience. And that really helped me. And that helped me to get a job as research technician in the University of Edinburgh. And that's how I joined Professor Nick Creed's fungal cell biology group in the University of Edinburgh. So I worked there until end of 2011. And then I had started looking for PhD positions all over the world. And I was lucky enough to get the Darwin Trust of Edinburgh scholarship, which funded my PhD study. And I completed my PhD. I started my PhD in the University of Edinburgh, but towards the end of the first year of my PhD, my PI, the supervisor, decided to move to the University of Manchester because he got a better position there as director of the Manchester Fungal Infection Group. And that's how I moved to the University of Manchester and completed my PhD from the University of Manchester. And then after spending almost 8 years in UK, I decided to go back home, go back to India. And I started as a guest lecturer in CMS College. And I worked there for almost a year, working as lecturer in cell and molecular biology. And then after that, I moved to Qatar, where I worked as a research specialist, working in Sidra Medicine. It's a beautiful hospital. It's a very big hospital in Qatar with this beautiful installation of the different embryological stages. You might have seen this picture before. So I got the chance to work there for almost 1.5 years. After that, I got the opportunity to work as a postdoc in Monell Chemical Sciences Center, part of University of Pennsylvania in Philadelphia. So I moved along with my family to US. But unfortunately, after reaching there and starting the project, I realized that it didn't fit with my interests. I wouldn't say that it didn't fit with my interests. Rather, I found it difficult to work with live mice. And I decided that this is not a research job which I can continue for the rest of my life. So that's how I quit my job in Monell. And by that time, I had found another job here in UK in the University of Exeter, where I work now. And I work, I'm studying the redox triangle, the communication between the endoplasmic reticulum, mitochondria, and peroxisomes in mammalian cell lines. So that's my present research. So that's an introduction or a brief bio regarding me. Now, I have been asked to tell you all about from my own experience how a biological research environment or how you can pursue a biological research career abroad. So first of all, I'll start regarding the courses. So you all do a BSc degree course, which is 3 years in India, whereas abroad in UK and in some of the other countries in Europe, it's a 4 years BSc honors degree. And after that, you continue as an MSc student, which is a 1 year course or a 2 years course. In India, it's 2 years course, and it's mandatory that you do the 2 years MSc course to continue as a PhD student. Whereas here, it's not mandatory that you do a master's or MSc. If you have scored well enough in your BSc honors degree, that's good enough to continue as a PhD student. You could apply for PhD studentships. So if you come from India with a very good score, you might decide that you do an MSc course here, which is mostly 1 year. But I can tell you regarding the advantage and disadvantage of this. The good thing is that it's a 1 year MSc course, but if you ever decide to go back to India, you might be asked when you apply for certain jobs why you have a 3 years degree and just a 1 year master's. So bear in mind that if you decide to go abroad and then go back India after your course, it is always good to do a 2 years MSc course. Whereas if you decide to stay back abroad and continue in a research career abroad, then the 1 year master's is fine. So here, as I told you, it's not required that you do a master's. If you have very good score in your BSc, then you could start applying for PhD. And now another option is to do an MRes. MRes is Masters with Research. The difference between an MSc and an MRes is that an MSc is like a taught course, a taught module, where you would have 2 semesters, and towards the end of the second semester, you would be asked to do a 3 months research project. And you'll be given a list of projects that are offered in several institutes across the country, and you will be given the chance to choose the project that you want to work. So from the several disciplines, you can decide which project in which field you want to pursue. And in case of an MRes, there is no taught module. It's just a research project that is extensively done during a 1 year. And now you can decide which course you want to choose based on the progress that you want to make after your research. Now, some people have the intention of continuing as a researcher. If that is the case, then I would suggest that you choose an MRes over an MSc, because at the end of the day, you will gain more experience in a research laboratory if you do an MRes. And also you would have had some publications by the end of that 1 year research project, which is going to help you to go through the PhD interviews and or to get through the PhD selection process more easily compared to an MSc. Now, I did an MSc, but the thing is that even if you're doing an MSc course, when you are given the research project towards the end of the MSc, choose it wisely. Decide which project that you want to do based on your interest. Now, if you're someone who is like terrified of handling mice like me, please don't choose a research project handling mice or any other kind of animals. Decide something that you could do in research. I mean, there are several opportunities where you don't have to handle live animals. So you can do something in working with cell lines. You could choose a project doing plant cell biology. You could choose something like genomics or bioinformatics project. So there will be the opportunity to choose from the projects. So if you ever come abroad for an MSc, focus on the research project and choose it wisely and do it well. You will be joining a research group as part of a research institute elsewhere from where you have been doing your studies. And it's very important that you complete that research project. It's based on the experience that you have from that research project that you get the opportunity to continue in research. Because it's very important that you have a good reference by the time that you complete your messy research project. And then coming to PhD, it varies in different countries. Even in case of MSc, if you decide to do an MSc in Germany, it can be 2 years course. Whereas in UK, It's mostly 1 year, but there are universities offering 2 years as well. And then coming to PhD, even in case of PhD, in India, from what I know, it's a 5 years PhD course, whereas here it's just 4 years. And in US, it's 5 years. So if you would like to do a PhD, at the end of the day, it doesn't matter if you did a 4 years PhD or a 5 years PhD, to be honest. If you have good publications, if you have very good publications, if you have had good experience in a good research environment, then that is good enough for you to continue as a researcher after your PhD. Now, the PhD is only the beginning of a research career. Especially in countries like UK, US, it's just the beginning of your research career. Only the people who have completed a PhD will be able to continue to become a principal investigator in an academic research or in a clinical research, mostly, in most cases. In case of clinical research, if you are like a medical doctor, then even without a PhD, you could continue to become a PI or a principal investigator. Principal investigator is like the supervisor of the research group. So in coming to PhDs, again, you can decide the country where you would like to do a PhD based on all these factors. The duration really doesn't matter. At the end of the day, it's how you come out. If you scored well enough, if you have written a very good thesis, if you've got a good publication record, then that's good enough. Now, coming to the career options, I would divide this into 4 different categories. One is the academic research, and then there is the translational medicine and clinical research, both of which come as part of a hospital research environment, and then industrial research, which is mostly working in like pharmaceutical companies, like how you would work in a biocon in India. A similar scenario where you will be given an opportunity to work in some kind of industry, like developing vaccines, some kind of antibiotics, all those kind of research come under industrial research. Now, I work in academic research. Mostly I have worked in academic research. So if you talk about an academic research environment, it's mostly part of universities. Most of the universities abroad have a strong research department as part of their department of biology or physics or chemistry or whichever the subject is. They have a strong research department, and it will be comprised of several PIs or principal investigators or scientists who own their own research group. When you say you own the research group, you'll be doing a job as part-time lecturer, like part-time teaching duty will be there. At the same time, you will be looking after a research group where you'll be leading a research topic, and you will be the guide for all the people who are working as part of that team. So that's like the top level in a academic research environment. So starting from the lowest level in an academic research job is general laboratory technician. So a general research technician, what he or she does is to do the general lab duties, such as health and safety documentation, which is very important in countries like US and UK. And then you will be taking charge of like the sections for preparation of media, autoclaving, all those stuff. So that's the duty of a general research technician. And then there will be the project research technician jobs, where a person who has completed a BSc degree or a master's degree can apply to. Now, the research technician jobs, which are advertised as part of a project, they will be solely working on that project, assisting a postdoc or a PhD student to complete that research project. And then comes the level of research specialist. Now, this research specialist job, you won't find it anywhere in Europe. It's mostly in US and Middle East that you have the job of a research specialist, and there are different levels to that. There is the lowest one is the level 1 and the highest level 4. So based on your experience and education, you can be hired as one of these levels, research specialist level 1, 2, 3, or 4. And then now that job can be in case of US and in Middle East, this job is like a stable post in an academic research. And then comes the PhD students. Now, I don't know how the PhD students, from what I hear, from the research environment in academia in India, I don't think a PhD student is asked to come like daily on a daily basis to the research lab. Whereas in UK or US, as a PhD student, based on the subject, if you're doing a research project in cell and molecular biology, or in just molecular biology, you're expected to come to the research lab every day. And um, now it can vary between different PIs. Some PIs can be very strict regarding this, whereas most of the PIs will be lenient about this. Like you could choose the time when you come and work in the research lab on a day, but you have to come daily, like on a day-to-day basis, and then you have to have a meeting every week with your PI where you will be updating him or her with the progress that you have made in the research, and then um, you'll be asked to give talks, you'll be asked to give seminars, you'll be asked to give poster sessions. So as part of your PhD study, sometimes you can get the opportunity to work in different countries. Like you'll be sent as a visiting student to another lab to learn an important technique to continue that research project that you're doing. So a PhD student comes somewhere in between a technician level and a postdoc level. So you're here, it's like a serious study where you'll be expected to come to the research lab every day and get good publications out of that PhD studentship. At the end of the day, like I told you before, if you are doing a PhD, what matters is the number of papers that you can publish from that research. And based on that, you get promoted. After you have completed your PhD, you could apply for postdoc positions. And in the postdoc position, you can start as a postdoctoral research assistant, and then as a fellow, and then as a research associate. And then you can, after like several years of experience of working as a postdoctoral research associate, you can be promoted to a senior research fellow, where you could be applying for your own grants, but still working under the main PI that you're working under. And then you could apply for lecturer jobs. Now, there is a difference in the lecturer jobs and being part of the academic research group. Now, you could either choose to become a full-time lecturer so that you won't have any responsibility of research, or you could decide to continue as a senior research fellow in the academic research and do some kind of teaching. Like a few hours in a week will be dedicated to teaching. So if you're doing that, then it's most likely that you'll be promoted at some point as a principal investigator or a scientist in that university. And after that, after several years of working as a principal investigator, and after you have made like significant contributions to the research that you're working on, here the university offers an honorary doctor fellowship, and then they become promoted as a professor. So here the professor title is only given to people who have um, have made significant contributions in research, and then you will be promoted as, or you'll be given a honorary doctorate by the university, and then you can carry on with the title professor. So most of the PIs in a university will just have the title as doctor, and at some point they will be promoted as a professor, but it doesn't make a difference. I mean, of course, if you are a professor, you'll be earning more money, you'll be higher in the position, but to the research that you're doing, it doesn't make a difference, because you'll be owning the research group and you'll be guiding the people in that particular research group. Now, other than these advertised positions that come as part of academic research, you could apply as voluntary project intern. And if you ever come to UK or US, or if you're even in India and you want to come abroad, it's good that you start writing emails to interested labs where you know that you would like to be part of this kind of research. If you know for sure that this is the kind of research that I want to continue doing, then you could write emails to the PIs of that group and ask for voluntary jobs there. So that will be like jobs where you won't be paid, but you will gain experience. And in some cases, people even end up having publications from doing a voluntary research project. So if you have done like a master's here and you haven't found a job, a paid job, one good option is to ask to different PIs or email different PIs and ask for voluntary project interns positions. And that will give you the experience which can be used to apply while applying for jobs. And one drawback about the academic research environment is that it's not stable until you become a PI. So for example, my position as a postdoctoral research associate is a temporary contract job. You won't have like a permanent contract where you will be appointed in that university. My project ends, the day my project ends, my job ends. So it's my responsibility to continue to have done good research and produce good results so that my PI can apply for an extension for my project or to get a new project with a good funding so that he or she can hire me again. So this is like an unstable job until you have reached the level of a principal investigator or a full-time lecturer. Until then, this is not a stable job. So you will be applying for jobs, but that will be like temporary contracts. So once I finish a contract, by that time, I would have applied for another contract elsewhere or in the same lab, and I would have got that position. So it's not like a stable job. Whereas if you start working as the lower level as a general laboratory technician, the general laboratory technician posts are like permanent jobs advertised. So that you could apply to, but you will continue as in that job. I mean, you can quit whenever you want, but if you would choose to become like a permanent staff there, you could choose to stay there and continue as just the general research technician there. The salary scale will be low compared to the rest of the levels. However, that will be like a stable job. And then in US, I know that the research specialist jobs are also offered on a permanent contract, some of them, not all of them. Some of those jobs are advertised as permanent jobs. In that case, you could continue permanently there. Now, coming to next, this one is translational medicine. So translational medicine is the field of research which comes as part of hospital environment. So in the hospitals, in most of the hospitals in countries like UK, US, or in Europe, they have a research department. And in translational medicine, what you will be doing is it's like patient-oriented research, where you'll be filling like you'll be preparing questionnaires, interviewing patients, getting patient data collected, patient samples collected, and doing the analysis of the results, and then getting good publications out of it. It's easier to get publications if you are in translational medicine, in clinical research. I wouldn't say that there is no effort into it, but compared to the general biological research labs in an academia, it's much easier to have more publications, the number of publications with high impact factors in a translational medicine or clinical research. But the thing is that it will be like you have a patient coming to a hospital, he or she has a disease which is like a rare condition, or you find some aspects of that disease to be novel, and then you can write a publication about that and get it published. It will be like a short research article, but you could compare to the academic research where you'll have to spend like the whole contract, like a 3 years or a 4 years doing a research and then getting publications. It will be much easier to get publications compared to that. Comparatively, it's easier to have more publications if you're working in the translational research or clinical research environment. Now, mostly nurses and medical practitioners like doctors, even if they have got the medical doctor degree to work as a GP, they can continue to do a PhD here. And in that case, people choose translational medicine because this will be mostly in the hospital environment. And it's so mostly in the clinical investigation scenario that this fits. And then there is an additional job that can come other than what I've explained in case of the academic research. An additional job that can come in a clinical research or a translational medicine field is the job of a research coordinator. Now, the research coordinator, what he or she does is to get patient consents, like prepare the questionnaires, give it to the patients, and take them through the questions and tell them if they are interested or not in continuing in the research study or giving their own samples for contribute that their own samples for the research or not. They give the consent and then they collect the samples, and then that will be taken as part of some kind of a research project that's already going on in a hospital research. So that's the job of a research coordinator, and you will find this research coordinator jobs in Middle East and US, and this is mostly the job that they do is to coordinate the research, is to make sure that samples are collected from patients and given to the particular research laboratory. And then you can continue as a PhD student also in translational medicine. And there is another opportunity, and that is to do a Master of Medical Science and Clinical Investigation. So there are MSc courses offered just in clinical research. So this translational medicine also fits within the clinical research, but clinical research has got jobs like the biomedical scientist, medical laboratory scientist, clinical laboratory scientist. Now, the difference between the biomedical scientist and clinical laboratory scientist is that the clinical laboratory scientist is a much senior post compared to the biomedical scientist. The biomedical scientist is mostly like a laboratory technician who will be working in a research lab or the hospital lab, where he or she will be dealing with patient samples daily and collecting the data out of it and giving it to a PI or a principal investigator in the clinical research environment or the clinical research field. So there are PIs who are working in as part of hospitals, and they will be having a research group, and they will be having most of the research posts that I have already explained as part of the academic research. You could work as a research technician there, you could work as a research specialist there, you could be doing a PhD with a clinical research PI, you could be doing a postdoc there, or you could be just working as a biomedical scientist in that clinical research environment. But the good thing about being a biomedical scientist or a clinical laboratory scientist is that it is a permanent job. Jobs advertised as part of the clinical research are more likely to be permanent jobs compared to the academic research. So if you are fine with working with patient samples, like you'll be dealing with patient samples daily, then you could choose. And if you're interested in a clinical research career, then you could continue, or you could start thinking about doing an MSc in clinical research. Not just an MSc in some university, but it will be affiliated. You will get your degree from a university affiliation, but the work will be mostly done in the hospital environment. And a clinical laboratory scientist is a much senior post, where you will be managing the data collected by the biomedical scientist. Now, the only drawback is that if you have been trained as an academic researcher, in order to get into this biomedical scientist or clinical laboratory scientist post, you should have a registration. Now, this registration is specific in different countries. In UK, it's the IBMS registration or the HCPC registration that you have to get. Now, you could get this registration by doing a clinical research MSc, which will be affiliated to a university. And by the time that you have completed your MSc in clinical research, you would have automatically gained, if you have successfully completed the course, you would have gained this IBMS or HCPC registration automatically. Whereas if you're coming from an academic research environment, you have to apply for a scientist training program. Now that is advertised yearly on a yearly basis. There will be some posts advertised as scientist training program. You apply for that, you will be going through several interviews and a selection process. And if you're selected, then you could continue to work in the clinical research laboratory. And in that case, one advantage is that, like I told you, there is the possibility of becoming permanent in that lab. So if you ever get an opportunity to be trained as a scientist, as part of a scientist training program, you're hired by the NHS or the government health service scheme in whichever country it is, and then you'll be having a training of 3 years where you will be doing a training program, but at the same time you're considered as a staff there and you're getting paid, you're getting good payment there. For example, in UK, if you get to the scientist training program, you will be paid like around £31,000 a year, which is a very good salary in UK. The average salary in UK is around 36,000. So a 31,000 annual salary, with that salary, you can be trained and that's for 3 years. So if you do this 3 years scientist training program, if you have successfully completed it, then you can be promoted as a clinical laboratory scientist, which is a very highly, like it's a highly paid job. It's equivalent to some of the medical doctors, like a doctor specialized in like surgery or whatever that is. In case of the research environment in clinical research, that's almost like a research head there. So you can specialize. Again, you can specialize during your training, either to do like a cell biology. You could choose to become like a hematologist. You could choose to become a bioinformatician. So there are different categories under the clinical research laboratory training. So I put the links here. I'll send this to you so that you could go through this. So you could, according to like wherever, whichever country you decide to go, and if you would like to continue in clinical research, I would suggest that you look for courses where you get the registration as a clinical researcher by the end of your course. Okay, so in UK, there are MSc courses offered in certain universities where you will be given the HCPC registration by the time that you successfully complete the course. So that will be more valuable, or that will help you more to get into the clinical research scenario. So it's a must that you have this registration in order to work in a clinical research laboratory. If you don't have that registration, it's very difficult to continue as a clinical researcher. You might be able to continue as a general research laboratory technician, but even in that case, you should have some sort of registration. That's like a license required to work in the hospital environment. So this is something that you have to bear in mind. And I would suggest that according to the country that you choose to go, and if you would like to continue in clinical research, please go through these websites and check which are the courses or universities that offer an MSc course that can give you the registration of that specific country. Now, coming to the different subjects, like I told you, at present you're learning cell biology, molecular biology, biochemistry, biostatistics, bioinformatics, genomics, microbiology, immunology. Now, these are all subjects which you could specialize by the time you start your research. And you should choose it wisely according to your own interest. I mean, if you're someone who is better doing like a programming, or who is more interested in sitting like in front of a computer and working for long hours, then I would suggest that you choose a career in bioinformatics. Now there is strong research going on, especially like Indian people are mostly managing the bioinformatics departments, because I think it's because the engineering colleges in India are very good, and many of them offer these engineering degrees in biotechnology and bioinformatics, and people with programming skills or software skills, they are often hired for the bioinformatics jobs. Other than that, if you work in an academic research environment, you will be doing, for example, in my case, I'm doing a bit of each and every one of these subjects. Like in my day-to-day research, I'm doing cell culture, I'm doing DNA RNA extractions, I'm doing protein extractions, I'm doing Western blots, I'm doing microscopy, some advanced microscopy techniques, I'm doing data analysis, and then I'll need the biostatistics tools for that. I will have to do some sort of bioinformatics for the cloning experiments. So it's like a combined, a combination of these different subjects that you work in academia. So if you're working in an academic research project, it will be at some point of time you'll be going through all these different subjects. So that's why you're learning all these different subjects, and it's very important to gain the skills in each of these subjects, because in your CV you could list under each of these subjects which skills you have gained. Like even now, by the time you have completed your BSc degree, you would have gained some skill in cell biology, you would have gained some skill in biochemistry. So you could prepare a skills list and list the skills that you have under each section and stick it as part of your CV, because people will be looking for what skills you have got when they hire you to do a research project. So I've given some useful links here as well for the clinical research as a continuation of what was given in the previous slide. I'll send you these links as well. You could go through these different websites and check how you could be trained, specialized in different subjects. So in the clinical research environment, especially if you're going through the scientist training program, you can choose which area you want to specialize, and you could solely concentrate on that subject and continue your training according to what you want to become at the end of it. Like a bioinformatic or a genomics research training program will focus mostly on the genomics side or the bioinformatics side. You won't be having much research lab exposure. You'll be just working on the in the genomics, of course, yes, there will be the sequencing facilities and all, but in case of bioinformatics, it will be not a research lab work environment. Now, coming to the general work environment, now it will be a multicultural environment. You will be working with people from different countries. For example, if you work in UK, I think most part of UK is like multicultural now. It's almost like a global village, like where you have representatives from all over the world. So in case of universities, people come from all over the world to study there, and then they become part of the faculty there, then they become part of the research environment there. So in most of the research labs where I have worked abroad, it's like a multicultural environment. So you will have the opportunity to interact with people from different parts of the world. And it's very important that you learn to get along with people from different environments. So when you come for the first time when you come abroad, you would of course have a culture shock, but you will get over it eventually. And I think with the present generation, it's much easier compared to what I was like 10 years back, where I didn't have like a mobile phone then, or I didn't have the exposure that the students now have. I think in today's scenario, people are more like aware of how the environment or a university environment is like even when you start to plan to go abroad, you might have some kind of idea of how the work environment or the university environment there is. So it's mostly multicultural, and like I told you, it's very important that you go along with all these different people and learn something from each of them, and that will help you to continue in, like if you ever get into a work environment in UK or US, you will be always like meeting people from abroad. Like it will be mostly people from other countries that you're working along. So even when you start your studies as an MSc student, when you start or decide to come abroad, try to mingle with people from different countries. I mean, most of the time what happens is that when students come abroad from India, they will try to just go along, especially people from Kerala, they try to get along only with people from their own country and not too much with people from other country. But if you do that in as early as possible, and if you have the intention of staying back in that particular country, that will help you to adapt better to that country. So try to do that. That's just a suggestion from me. And then in the research work environment, it's very important in countries like UK and US that you follow a health and safety guidelines. Now, this has got great importance abroad compared to India. In India, we won't be going through a fire safety training or a health and safety documentation. I'm not sure about the whole, like all the departments or all the institutes in India haven't worked anywhere else other than that in Kerala. But from what I know, we don't give much importance to the health and safety of the people who are working in any kind of in like institute. Whereas abroad, they have great importance for this. When you start in a university, even as a student, you'll be asked to go through a fire and safety training first. You'll be asked to go through several health and safety documentations before entering the lab. And that's very important here. So you will be asked to do several trainings, and then you should have fulfilled that health and safety documentation, and you would be expected to continue all the protocols for the health and safety in that research lab. So it's very important to be aware of that. So I'm just giving you, like from my experience, like what you can face in a research lab on a day-to-day basis. So you will be asked to fill questionnaires before you start to work with a certain cell line. For example, if in my research laboratory, my supervisor decide to work with a new cell line, even before he brings that cell line to the research lab, all of the people in the lab should have signed, or should have, the PI should have prepared a certain document stating that it is safe for the people in his or her lab to work this particular cell line. So you would be required to go through that documentation first and then sign it, consenting that you agree to work with these risks associated. If there are risks, you should be stating those risks there, and then you should agree to work with that cell line. Only then you will be allowed to work with that cell line. So all the health and safety will be taken into consideration for all the people working in the research lab. And then coming to the salary range, it can change according to countries. Like I told you, the starting position is a research laboratory technician. But if it's like a research technician who is working as part of a project, you'll get the salary according to the what is allocated as part of that grant for a research technician. Whereas if it's a general laboratory technician, it will be mostly what is allocated by the university for all the general research laboratory technicians in that university. That will be much lower compared to a research technician working on a project. And then coming to the research specialist post, it can vary according to the different levels. Research specialist 4 will be the highest paid. And then the PhD students, if you have got a stipend to cover your PhD study, you will be getting it like a monthly salary to your bank account. And then if you have in your PhD scholarship, if they have allocated for your tuition fee, they will be paying it to the university. So if it's like a 4-year PhD studentship with scholarship, some scholarships offer just the tuition fee, and you will have to find a way to meet your monthly needs. Like you will have to have some part-time job to get some money for your living allowance. Whereas some of the scholarships offer like a living allowance plus a tuition fee. So then you'll get paid like a monthly salary. Like it's similar to a salary, like a monthly amount will be allocated for your living allowance, and that you will get. And the good thing about getting the stipend as a PhD student is that as long as you're in the student category, you're tax exempt. If you're working as a postdoc, like the salary that I'm getting paid now, they deduct a certain amount as tax. Whereas in case of a PhD student, when I was a PhD student, from the scholarship that I was getting offered, nothing was cut. Like nothing was cut off from that. You would get the whole amount that is stated as the stipend in your PhD. Whereas in case of a job, a normal job, even the case of a research technician, you will have to pay the tax. As long as you're a student, you are tax exempt. And so if you have a stipend offered as part of a PhD, you'll get the whole amount. And the salary range can change according to different countries. Now, if you go to the Middle East, some of the universities or some of the hospitals offer the highest salary from like the Middle East, like quite highly paid. And if you're working in the Middle East, you're tax exempt. So far, I think some countries like UAE have started to take some tax, but until now, the good thing about working in Middle East is that it will be tax exempt and you get highly paid. Whereas if you go to US and UK, you will get a decent amount for continuing or for your living allowance, but you will be paying the tax, and it won't be like how you get paid in Middle East. Whereas if you go to countries like Switzerland, the research jobs are highly paid. So it can change according to the country. I would say UK will be like UK and Europe. Most of the countries in Europe, other than Switzerland or Norway or Sweden, the salary range is in the lowest. Like if you compare the different countries in Europe, UK will be something, UK, Germany, all these countries will have around the same level for the different research jobs. Now you can find the salary offered when you search for jobs in the different websites, and you can be aware of how much you'll be getting paid. The average salary of all the people working in UK will be around the same, so that they have a similar standard of living. Whereas if you go to US, you will start noticing that the engineers are very highly paid. Like they get salary which is like much higher than what you get for a research scientist. the research scientist jobs in US compared to an engineer can be offered a lower salary level. And in that case, there will also be the tax you have to pay. But in case of US, you get some tax that you pay, like annually, you get it back. Whereas in UK, you won't get the tax that you're paying back. At the end of your period of service in a particular job, you will be offered, like after 60 years when you retire, you will be given something like a pension that you get in India. So that's how you get it back. Whereas in US, on like annual basis, they do like a tax. Like tax returns, like a certain amount of the tax that you pay will be returned to you at the end of the period. So at the end of the day, you need to have a salary, but I personally consider that it's more important to have a job satisfaction. So you should be focusing not on the salary at this point of time. And if you want to get like a highly paid job, a 9 to 5 job, a permanent job, and if you are fine with working with the clinical research environment, then I would suggest that you start focusing now on the clinical research side. Compared to the academic research where you do general biological research, biological sciences research, it's highly paid. And if countries like US, Australia, they all offer good salary. And compared to US and Australia or the Middle East, UK can be like the lowest one. I'm not comparing to India because I'm not aware of like how much you get paid there. But they offer a decent salary so that you can live with your family. You can fund, like you could have all the provisions. It will all be fine. But I'm just comparing. If you put the different countries, from my experience or from what I know, UK is like the lowest. I'm not discouraging anyone telling that don't come to UK. It's very good when it comes to standard of living. It's a very good country. You can live peacefully here. You could do your courses. The courses are I mean, if you do a course in like some countries like Russia, Ukraine, or China, from what I have heard, it's not recognized back in India, and you would have to go through some sort of like you have to write some exams to get it like equivalent to what we have in India. Whereas if you do a course in US, Australia, UK, Canada, all these countries, what they offer, the courses they offer, they all are recognized in India. So it should be fine to come abroad to do a research study in any of these countries. Whereas if you choose to go to countries like China, Russia, or Ukraine, or some countries like that, you will have to please inquire in advance that if that course is valid or recognized when you come back to India. And then, as I told you, you will have the opportunity when you're working in a research lab. One advantage is that you will have the chance to visit different countries because you will be asked to attend workshops or conferences in different countries. So that's like you will be doing it as part of your work, but at the same time, you're getting the opportunity to go to another country, to go to another lab, meet different people. That often happens in if you're working in US or UK or in Europe. It's part of your curriculum that you are asked to go to another lab to learn something. So most of the PhD students who come to UK, at some point of time, they visit another lab, either within UK or abroad, and it will be like a funded opportunity. You don't have to pay anything. It will all be funded by the research laboratory that you are working as part of. So they will be funding, the PI will have the funding for that, and they will be sending you abroad to work in another lab. And you will definitely have a chance during your PhD study to attend some conference, because in your CV at the end of your PhD you should have attended some conference. That's also a requirement. So you will have the chance to visit different countries for attending conferences, workshops, and research training. And my suggestion is that if you are ever sent to such a conference, workshop, or research training, make sure that you complete it well. And I mean, it will be difficult when you go to a foreign lab. For example, in my case, I was sent to Germany as part of my MSc research project. I didn't know the language at that time. I didn't know how the research environment was there at that time. But what I focused was to complete my research project. So I got a good reference from the PI whom I worked with there in Germany. So in that case, what helped me further was to get a good reference from the PI whom you work with. So irrespective of which country you are sent to, please make sure that the job that you're assigned, you get it completed well. What else? Regarding research work environment, you can ask me questions at the end of it and I can tell you from my experience. This is all that I remember. And then some other useful notes. In case of the research lab, no matter which post that you're assigned to or which job you're doing, you'll be asked to keep, if you're working in a research project, you'll be asked to keep a lab book. So it's very important that you have your lab book. And in these days, it's electronic lab book copies that are maintained. So either you should keep an electronic lab book or a hard copy of your lab notes. And it will be like when you're working in a university or in an academic research, you'll be given like a lab book which has the name of the university on it, and you'll be asked to put this date and record every work that you're doing as part of that research project. So it's very important that you do this regularly, you update it regularly. So that's part of the research job that you're doing, no matter which job, like even if it's like a senior postdoc position that you're having, you're expected to keep your lab book and do it well. And that will also help you because at the end of the research project, when you start writing your paper or start writing a research article or thesis or whatever it is, it's good to have that reference there. It's not just because the university has kept it compulsory that you complete the lab book and return to them. It will also help you to go back to your notes because there will be definitely you will have doubts by the end of your research project, like what I did then, oh, I have to refer to this one. So in that case, keeping the lab book regularly is like very important. So you will have to, and you'll be expected to keep a lab book. And then as you go along with your studies, whether it's BSc, MSc, or whether you're doing a job, even now, when I'm doing my job as a postdoc, I make it a point to update my CV and write an updated cover letter. Because like I told you, my job is a contract job for 3 years at present. By the end of the 3rd year, I should have updated my CV and cover letter with the present experience. So in order to update your CV and cover letter, you have to make sure that there are points or you're doing trainings regularly to update the CV or cover letter with. So you would be expected to learn something from each project that you do. If you choose a research career in biological sciences, you'll be learning forever. It's not like you're stopping to learn at some point and I'm going to do a 9-to-5 job. Even if you're doing a 9-to-5 job as a clinical research laboratory technician, you'll be expected to read papers, you'll be expected to learn new techniques. And in laboratories abroad, they make it a point that you attend at least one training a year. So in that way, you're advancing your career. So as you go along, make it a point to update your CV and write the cover letter, write an updated version of the cover letter. So I thought it would be useful to tell you what an academic CV should look like in case you want to apply for research. So in case of a research job, you should have a career profile where you tell in few lines what you intend to achieve as part of this job application. So that will be like, you can include a few lines there. And then your education experience, you should list your education and experience. So in the education section, you will be telling like, I did the BSc from this university this year to this year. So the education can be stated like BSc, MSc, PhD, whatever it is. And then in case of experience, work experience, you could include the titles of the jobs that you have done. And then also you could include a list of the projects done, because in case of research, what matters is people look at what skills you have. So they will be interested in knowing what projects that you have done, whatever projects that you have done, which have equipped you with these certain skills. So it will be good to state the different projects. So if you write in your experience section, at present, you wouldn't have done any job at present when you're doing a master's, but under experience, what you could do is to write the title of the research projects that you have done as part of your course, and explain in short like what the project was, and or if you have got some prizes, some achievements as part of doing that project, you could state that and highlight that. So at this stage, when you are doing your studies also, you could include all the projects that you have done in under the experience section. And then there will be the publication sections that can be reviews, research articles, or reports submitted. All those can be included as publications. Now, what is most important from a research perspective is the number of publications that you have got. Not everyone can have like 5 to 10 publications at the end of doing a research master's research project. You're not expected to have so many publications, but if you have at least one good publication, even when you finish your PhD, if you have one good publication in a good journal, that's good enough to get you a job. So publications are very important. Even when you choose your research project, make sure that you write up your thesis, or you spend some time in reading about the research and writing up some sort of article and try to get it published somewhere. I mean, it could be like attending a conference and getting the abstract or that published as part of the conference, the conference journals that they publish. You could get it published there. So it could be like a small report. It could be like a short review. It could be like a short methods paper. Try to get something out of it, some sort of publication out of it, because in a research career, people look at the publications. I mean, in an academic research, they might not be looking for like very high impact factor paper, whereas in a clinical research, definitely it will be definitely high impact factor papers, because even the shortest articles will be published in like high impact factor. The impact factor is not like a standard. I mean, people often talk about impact factor of papers, but it's different in case of academic general research and clinical research. And people are aware of it. When they hire you for a clinical research job, if you have had clinical experience, they will be looking for high impact factor papers. Whereas in case of an academic research, if you're hired to such a job, people might not be looking at the impact factor of the paper. All that they will be concentrating on would be the paper and the quality of the paper. I mean, the PI will read through it and they will have an understanding of how or which impact factor range that it should fit to according to the topic of the research. So it's very important to have publications. So even now, when you are offered to do research projects as part of your BSc degree, make sure that you write up something. And if you can get at least one publication, that would be very valuable for helping you to get into a research career later on. Then memberships in societies, and like it's very important to have some sort of membership in for example, in my case, I have a membership of the Royal Microscopic Society. I have a membership of the Biochemical Society. You'll be expected to pay a certain amount every year as to renew the membership, but it will be very valuable to have. And often PhD students have a discount for the memberships. It's not like you have to pay equal amount for maintaining it. And if you are from countries, certain countries, they have a list of countries where they will be having some sort of reduction in the membership fee. So you could look for some societies and get a membership in some kind of biological research field. If you have a membership in some society, it will be very valuable, and put that in your CV. And then you have to list the poster presentations or the oral presentations or the conferences that you have attended, and which country it was, which year that was. You could just state it there. That will be important. And then if you've got some achievements, like you got a high rank when you graduated, you had like the first rank in the university in India, then you could state all those achievements. You have given some presentations and you have got some prizes. You could list all those. And the last section of the CV of a biological research job application is usually the referees. Now, this you might not be familiar with. In India, I don't know how much of importance is given to references, but if you go abroad, if you ever go abroad to US, UK, Europe, Australia, all these countries, they ask for references. Now, the reference is something written by a person who already know you. So if you have done a PhD, your PhD advisor would be expected to write a reference regarding you. So it's So in that case, it's very important to have a good working environment, to maintain a good work environment in the lab, and to have a good interaction with all the people in the lab, because your PI will be noticing all these things. And at the end of the day, after you have completed your course, you think that, oh, I've left the lab. Now I don't have to worry about anything in that lab. No, that's not the case. Your reference will be very important in every stage of your career. Like a PhD advisor, he will be asked to write a reference for you even if you're applying for a senior postdoc position later on, like after you have done like a 5 postdoc positions. Even after that, your PhD advisor might be asked to write a reference for you, because in certain jobs it specifically states a reference from your PhD advisor. So at this stage, what you all could do is to make sure that you are doing your projects, your BSc research projects well, so that if you're going abroad, even for the MSc course, one of your teachers would be expected to write a reference. It's mostly 2 references, and in some cases they will be asking for 3 referees. So you'll be giving the name and the contact details of the referees, and you should have already told that referee that please notice that I'm applying for this job and you might be asked to write a reference for me. Please give a good reference for me. So if ever you asked one of your teachers is asked to write a reference, you should make sure at this point that you're behaving well, you're doing your projects well, you're doing your assignments well, so that he or she can write a very good reference for you. So that's very important. If your intention is to go abroad for studies, reference is very important. So these are the different sections in the CV that you should be having. And then coming to a cover letter, you would be expected to write a cover letter. In most of the job application sites, whether it's like a university website or a hospital or a clinical research, you would be expected to upload your CV. There will be like an online application that you will be filling, and then that you will be asked to write a cover letter. Either you write the cover letter in the in the space provided, or you upload a cover letter. Now, my advice is to keep it concise. From my experience in the biological research science, the cover letters, I have found that some people write research statements, and in that case, the research statements will be specifically asked. But in case of a cover letter, write it and customize it to the needs of that job that is advertised. So often when jobs are advertised or PhD studentships are advised, for example, if you go to a website like findaphd.com, you will find PhD positions advertised from all over the world. And in that case, if you're asked to write a cover letter, make sure that you go through the advertisement well, save that advertisement, whatever details is given regarding that job, save it to a folder, a named folder, and go through that well and write your cover letter in a way that you're explaining how your experience and how your studies fit into that job, or how you can adapt to that job. Now, it might not be that you have the relevant experience. Still, you could write at like from whatever like state whatever experience you already have, and then at the end of the cover letter you can write that I'm willing to learn any new techniques that is offered as part of this job, or that is required as part of this job. So that shows the willingness to learn. In the cover letter, you should make it a point that by the time this person reads this cover letter, that person should know how you fit to that job. And you should make the maximum impact in that cover letter to make that person believe that you are the best person for doing this job. If you have written your cover letter well, it's most likely that, and you have a good academic background, it's most likely that you will be invited to an interview. What I find is that most people go wrong in writing a cover letter. They don't go through the advertised job. They don't go to the specifics of that project. They just blindly write a cover letter, a general cover letter for all jobs, but that's not the case. My strong advice is that you go through the job requirement and write a cover letter for each of those each of those PhD studentship according to the specifications of that project, and write well that how you fit into that project. And then in some cases, you'll be asked to write research statements. In that case, what you could do is to write about the different research projects that you have done. So in case of PhD studentships, I find that they ask specifically to write like an academic statement or a research statement. In that case, you could write like a short summary of the projects that you have done in each paragraph. and make it up to like a 2 pages one. And then another thing that you could do, even if a job is not advertised on the website, if you're interested, if you find a PI who is doing some sort of interesting research, if you are interested in joining that team, you could always email that PI with your expression of interest. And that's something that people do here in UK, US, and it works. If you email a PI, and if that person has the funding to hire you at some post in their lab, if you have got a strong skill that PI is interested in hiring you, then it's most likely that that expression of interest will be accepted. Or you could write like, please inform me, like tell your research interest, and tell at the end of the email that please inform me if ever an opportunity comes in your group. In that way you can state it, so that even so what people look for here is your interest in doing that research. So if you can convince that person that you are the best person, or you are interested in doing this research, then it's most likely that you get a chance for an interview there. So try doing that. And another advice to give you is to save the job specification and cover letter when you apply for that job, so that if ever you're invited to that interview, you could go and refer back to what the job advertisement was. Because in case of interviews, what you will be asked mostly here in interviews abroad is from your CV, what you have written on your CV and cover letter. They keep the CV and cover letter in front of you, and the skills list as well, and go through the CV, cover letter, and skills list. Interviews in US, UK, and most of the research labs, from my experience, it's nothing from like what you have learned, or what is the value of this certain question like that. No, it's mostly from your CV and cover letter. They ask you questions to confirm that what you have written in your CV and cover letter is true. They are making sure that what you have written as having an experience of it is true. That's what they do in the interviews here. They never ask a question outside that. Most of the interviews, that's what happens. They never ask like a question which is not from that particular field. Some of the questions I have put it here, like in most of the interviews that I have attended, the first thing will be to introduce yourself. Now that you can do ahead, you can prepare that ahead of time, and you can learn to introduce yourself very well. Like it should be a short introduction, make it short, but include the key points. And then you would be asked like, explain some of the challenges faced, some of the problems solved by you. You could be asked to talk about a paper that is published from that particular lab. If I apply for a job in a certain research project, you should make it a point to read at least one article from that lab. And then if you're asked, could you explain a paper from our lab? Or often you're asked to explain, how much do you know about our research, or the research project that I'm doing? So you should have some understanding of what sort of research they are doing. So read at least one paper from wherever you're getting the interview call, like whichever research group is inviting you for the interview, make it a point to read at least one research article from that lab. And another thing is you will be asked about salary expectations, why you think you're suitable for this job, and talk about your like what you want to achieve in life. All these things are all these things can be asked. All these are the questions that I have been asked so far. I don't think I have ever had an interview abroad, whether in US, UK, or Europe, or in the Middle East, where they have asked questions outside the field of my research. They mostly go through my CV and cover letter and ask questions that are fitting within or my CV, my experience. They don't ask anything outside that field. So it's important that you study your CV and cover letter and write only what is true. Don't write that I've got experience in doing facts or doing like advanced microscopy techniques if you have never had the chance to do any of those. Write what is true, because you'll be asked questions during your interview to make sure that what you're writing is true. Mostly the general questions, and people at the end usually ask, have you got any questions that you would like to ask us? So you prepare a few questions in advance, not anything like too deep or anything, but just some general questions. you could ask about their job or the job advertisement or the project, how long is the project or something like that. Some general question you could ask them. That will also show you that, also show them that you have an interest in carrying on or doing this job. So ask a few questions to them. If you are offered like space to ask questions, prepare a few questions for that as well. And what you could always do is to have a mock interview with someone so that you have the confidence level by the time you attend the interview. So that you could always, if you have been invited for an interview for a PhD study, then you should have a mock interview. Make it a point to have a mock interview with one of your teachers so they can guide you, they can give you useful questions. And like I told you, even for PhD studentships, they don't ask if it's abroad. I'm not talking about what is advertised in India. From my experience of applying for PhD studentships and jobs abroad, they won't go out of the subject field that you have worked. And so make it a point to write a good CV, write a good cover letter, learn to write cover letters even from now. Look at the job advertisements that are advertised that are advertised in different websites and prepare cover letters and ask your teachers to go through them so that they can correct you. And always keep it up. Like if you are someone who are interested in research, you'll be expected to learn forever. Like you are not stopping the learning process anywhere. Like every day you are learning new things. So make a skills list, update your skills list, and try to learn as much as you can, because learning is very important as part of research. And another thing is, like I told you, always be open to learning new things, attending trainings. I mean, attending at this point, you could find some training that is offered in some institute. I mean, you see the advertisements, right? Apply for some of them. If you want to continue in research, these trainings help you a lot. And stating that in your CV also helps you a lot. So attending conferences, attending some workshops, try to do that even from now. Then regarding visas. Now, if you are offered a PhD studentship or a master's course, be aware of what the visa is going to offer you. Because if you come to UK, when I came here for a master's, I had the opportunity to apply for an extension for 2 more years after my studies. So that helped me to get a job here. In some countries, they don't offer that. So make sure that you find this out in advance before you apply for a studentship abroad, that what is the visa that you're going there. If you go to US, you might be going in a J1. If it's like a research job, it will be a J1 visa, and with the possibility of extension up to 3 or 5 years. And after that, you'll have to change to H1B visa, and then you'll have to change to EB1, and then you might get a green card there. But this all depends on how you advance, how you do your job. At the end of the first year, if they find that you're not suitable for this job, and then you might have to quit. So whereas in some countries, like in UK, you are offered a visa in advance. Like if you have a job here under Tier 2 visa scheme, in UK, the visa scheme is like Tier 1, Tier 2. Then there is the Global Talent Visa. So if you are doing a master's, you would be a Tier 1 student. And then I'm not sure about the tier about that. You might have to check that. Yeah, for a studentship, they offer a 2-year stay back option after your course. So if it's like an MSc course, and if you have successfully completed the course, and these days they make sure that you are spending enough time on campus and not just doing any part-time job, because there are restrictions on doing part-time jobs. If you are thinking about meeting a living expense by doing a part-time job when you come for a master's abroad, be aware that you are only allowed to work 20 hours a week. So that will give you enough for your living expense, but not enough to pay your tuition fee. So you should have some provision for meeting how you would pay the tuition fee in advance, and then try to do a part-time job, find a part-time job and meet the requirement, like meet whatever you can earn for your living expense. You can do that through a part-time job. And after you have completed your master's, you might have like a 2-year stay back option. During that time, you could like do a part-time job for a living expense, for meeting the living expense. And at the same time, do a voluntary job, which would give you the experience that you need for applying for a good job. so that you end up with a good job. And if you have like a good job offer, then they might offer the visa extension after the 2 years. In most of the cases, what I find is that people have to go back after the stay back period because they haven't found a good job. So be aware of the visa issues before you apply for studentship or a job abroad. Um, in case of, like I told you in UK, what you get is if there is the option for a global talent visa, which I am on now. So that offers you a permanent residence in 3 years time. So if you have done a job in 3 years time, and I'm not restricted to the employer, like whoever I'm employed with, I could quit the job any day and go for another job. The visa is valid for 3 years. Whereas when you go to US, there is, for a studentship, it's different. But if you go for a job there, you have a visa to enter the country. They see the visa as a travel document. And every time you visit India, you will have to go to an embassy to renew that visa. And the visa is given for just 3 months period. So that's a travel document that you use for entering the country. Whereas your immigration status is like another document. It's a separate document. In countries like UK, the immigration document and the visa, it's like a combined one. So you have a visa for 3 years when you apply for that job or that studentship, and then you don't have to go when you go back to India. Every time you go back to India for like visiting your home, you don't have to go for another visa application appointment. You don't have to go through the interview process. Whereas if you're working in US, you might be expected to do that every time you visit your country. So make sure that you're like inquire about the visa process with whichever agency, or you could even write to the university HR. If you, in case of universities abroad, one good thing is that if you write an email to an HR, it's almost certain that you will get a reply. They will reply back. The human services section is quite active. It's not like you apply for something and you don't get it back. They respond to emails. So write emails to the HR. You can find it from the website of that university and write to them and ask regarding the visas. And they will guide you to whichever person who can answer that question. So make sure that you ask all those questions before you enter that country for a study, for like whether it's for studies or for job. Make sure that you inquire about all these. And then scholarships. Now, there are several scholarships that offer the stipend as well as the living allowance. It can be very competitive. You'll have to go through interviews. You'll have to go through a selection process where they find the best person suitable for that post, whether it's a PhD studentship or a job. So there are several scholarships offered. In the findaphd.com website, if there is like a scholarship announcement, you could apply for that in advance. And or if you're interested in a research lab, you could ask the PI in that lab, what do you think are the options that I have for funding, for getting some funding to work in your lab? You could always email and ask. And in all of the university websites, they have listed the scholarships which international students can apply for. Now, there is a difference in the tuition fee that is paid by a local candidate, like a citizen of this country, and a person applying from abroad. You are expected to pay 3 times the tuition fee amount that is paid by a local candidate. So the tuition fee for a PhD study it's very expensive. So make sure that you get a good scholarship. If you cannot fund your own studies, make sure that you get a good scholarship that can fund your study. Now, in reality, if you decide to meet your living allowance while doing your PhD by doing a part-time job, it's not realistic. Doing a PhD is like, I mean, it's a huge responsibility that you're taking. You will have to spend time outside the lab doing some reading. You'd be expected to read wide about the field. You'd be expected to give talks. So you will have more work than you're doing now as an MSc student. As an MSc student, you can expect to meet your living expense by doing a part-time job. But when you come to a PhD, when it comes to a PhD, if you don't have the living allowance, it can be very difficult because it's a 4 years or a 3 years term. You will be working in the lab and then 1 year for write-up. So it will be very difficult if you don't have the funding in advance. So search for scholarships and apply for scholarships. It is the same process as applying for a job or a PhD studentship. The scholarships also, you go through the same interview process. So prepare in advance. And another thing is the English language. The test that you take. You can start preparing now for IELTS or OET or TOEFL. OET is for medical research. It's for mostly for nurses, but you can prepare for IELTS, TOEFL, and now even in IELTS there are several categories. It's not like a single IELTS test. The UKVI has a separate IELTS test for certain jobs or certain studentships, whether you're doing a diploma or a master's. According to that, it can vary. So you might just need like a 5 or 6 score at that point. And for a job, you might be expected to have like a 7.5 score. So try to go for the IELTS training or TOEFL training while you're doing the BSc course, so that by the time you're about to apply for the MSc, you're well prepared and you have a good score in hand. It's very important. When you're going abroad, this English language test is, I find that people find it difficult to score for these, and that's where you find it difficult to get a position abroad. If you have a good English language score, because that's like a requirement. Once you have reached here, I don't think people care about how you talk or how you write. They are like, people here are considerate that you're coming from abroad. You might not know the language very well. It's all fine. So you don't have to worry about that. But the only thing is that because it's a requirement that you have a good score in these tests to apply for these jobs, make it a point to do the training in advance and write it, and then get a good score. Then, like I told you, always take initiatives in writing up. If you have done research projects somewhere, go to the PIA and tell, shall I write up a research article? Like if you have enough data, shall I write up a research article? Like, or you can write it up and then bring it to him. And then he might think, oh, this has got enough data here so that I can publish it. So always take initiatives in writing up. If you're in a research work, you would be expected to write research articles. It's not like you just do the lab work and get paid for what you do. You have the responsibility of writing your research work. And as I told you, it's very important to keep a positive work environment, because at the end of the day, your job satisfaction and your happiness depends on the work environment. So it's also your responsibility to keep a positive work environment. Whichever project that you're working on, whichever lab you're working, make sure that you have good interactions, you maintain a good working environment there. It's very important, because your PI will be noticing that and he will be writing that for your reference. And keep in touch with the people who worked with you, because reference matters. You never know whom you will need for writing a reference. All the teachers who are teaching you at this point of time, you will need a reference at some point from them. If your intention is to go for a research career, they will be asked to write a reference. One or two of your teachers or the department head will be asked to write a reference for you. So make sure that you get that. Okay, if you have done something wrong, before you leave, go and apologize to that person. Make sure that before you leave, you have a good and like relationship with all the people. So it's very important. No matter in which level, even if you're like a senior scientist who is trying to change from one university to another, you would be asked to get a reference. All the people who are working in the research, the reference matters. So please make sure that you maintain a good working relationship with the people whom you work with now. Like I told you, and it's very important to know or follow your interests. Never come to research or doing a research course thinking that it's like a 9-to-5 job. There is an added responsibility for a research career. You will be expected to read widely. You will be expected to write up. So you'd be expected to learn everything, like learn whatever you can, or you'll be learning daily some sort of skill. So keep an open mind. And if you want to go ahead and research, it is very important that you have the determination to carry on in a research career. There are going to be challenges. I mean, for women, there is going to be, at some point, you'll get married, you'll have kids, you'll have to maintain a work-home balance. And I mean, you have to do your responsibilities at home and make sure that you find the time for your reading. For example, having a young family, I know the difficulties. Like, I have to find time for reading other than the time when I come and spend time with my kid at home. So I have to often I have to wake up early morning and do the readings early and then go to the lab, because coming back from work, I cannot do anything other than concentrating on the work at home. So there are going to be challenges at every step. But if you have the determination to go ahead, and if you're really passionate about a research career, I'm sure you all can advance. So these are some of the websites. You all might be aware of the LinkedIn, where you could create a profile there and people notice that, and you could apply for jobs through LinkedIn websites. And these are some of the websites where you can find jobs abroad. I've just listed it there and I'll share it with you all. And go to the university websites, because the university websites for every university abroad, they have a strong, like a good website where you will have the links for the jobs advertised there. So go through the job profiles, try to find if you fit into any of them and start applying for them. I mean, you might find it difficult at this point with just a degree from India to find a job abroad straight away. You might have to get some sort of experience outside, else you'll have had some strong research experience, and then you might be hired to one of the jobs. But it's worth trying. Always try. Don't just stop just because some people say that, oh, you won't get it there, you won't get this, you won't get this done. Always, if you are passionate, if you are determined that you want to succeed in a research career, I'm sure you will be able to do that. There will be challenges. There will be several challenges as international students. When you come abroad, you will face several challenges. But if you have the determination and you have the passion, you can stay back. So that's it. And thank you all for listening. I hope I didn't make it too long.
Thank you, ma'am, for your very explanatory and thoughtful presentation. Now it's time for the interactive session, and I request the participants to come forward and put your queries in the chat box.
Please feel free to ask questions, okay? മലയാളത്തിൽ ചോദിക്കണമെങ്കിൽ ചോദിക്കാം. എനിക്ക് മലയാളത്തിൽ നന്നായിട്ട് സംസാരിക്കാൻ അറിയാം. അതുകൊണ്ട് അതിനെക്കുറിച്ച് ആരും വെറി ചെയ്യണ്ട കേട്ടോ. എന്നോട് ഇംഗ്ലീഷിൽ പറയാൻ പറഞ്ഞതുകൊണ്ടാണ് ഞാൻ ഇംഗ്ലീഷിൽ പറഞ്ഞത്. If anyone has any doubts, please come ahead and ask. I can try my best to answer your questions. ആർക്കും ഒന്നും ചോദിക്കാനില്ലേ? ആരൊക്കെയുണ്ട് പുറത്തു പോകാനായിട്ട് ആഗ്രഹിക്കുന്നവര്? After you have completed your course? Okay, so one person has asked, can I do a 1-year master's in one country and look for jobs in another country? Of course, you can do that. I mean, as long as the course that you're doing is like a recognized one. So if you do a master's in Australia, UK, US, it will be recognized like all over the world. There is no problem for that. Like you do a master's in UK and you apply for a job in US, it's fine. Can you name some scholarships that are useful for us after completing our degree? I mean, you have to check through the websites for masters. For the scholarships for masters, it can be very limited because you all are BSc students. There are scholarships offered by the Indian government, but abroad directly for applying for masters, I know that there is the British Chevening Scholarship and the one which I did, like the Darwin Trust and all, it's for PhD studentships. For masters, it's very limited. What I will do is to make a list, search for some of the scholarships and list it and then send it to you one of your faculty members, and they'll share it with you. At this point of time, I'm not certain about the MSc scholarships. There are very limited ones, but you could search for MSc funded MSc or MRes positions. Some of the labs offer like funded MRes positions. Then you could apply for that. And how to increase the chances of getting a scholarship. Of course, you'll have to have so one person has asked, can you please give some tips on how to increase the chances of getting a scholarship? Like any other job, you would be expected to have a good academic record. So get good scores or get good marks in your examinations. Have like some research articles. If you have got a research article, that's an added advantage. And then, of course, you'll have to attend the interview well. So if you are getting selected for the or shortlisted for the interview, make sure that you attend the interview well. So what is important at this point of time is to complete your course well, to have good marks by the time you finish your course. Have good IELTS score. Even for scholarships, you're expected to have the IELTS or TOEFL or whatever the English language requirement is. Make sure that you meet that. Yeah, that's it. And if it's after masters, then definitely the research articles is going to help you. Even if now if you have a research article, even if it's like a report, a short report or something, it's going to help you. The conferences that you have attended, workshops, trainings you have attended, whatever skills you have in your skills list, all these is important. And it is different according to the requirement of the scholarship. I mean, they will have given like a detailed explanation about what the requirements are. So you have to go through that, meet the requirement. You could email and ask if you have any doubts, and then try to find out people who have already got that scholarship. For example, in LinkedIn or some kind of career related like social media links, you can find the people who have been successful in attaining or obtaining that scholarship. Then try to make it a point to meet or talk to that person and know their experience of attending that interview, how they managed to get that scholarship, how they managed to succeed. That always helps. So try to find people who have already got that particular scholarship and talk to them and get more information regarding the interview process, the selection process in advance. Then, ma'am, is it okay to pursue masters from India and PhD abroad? Of course, it's fine. You could do the masters in India, and one good thing about that is that if you have done your masters in India and then you come abroad just for your PhD, even if you have to go back to India, you will never have to face that question of doing a 3 years degree and then just a 1 year masters. As long as you have got the 3+2, like the 3 years degree and a 2 years masters from India, even if you go back to India, you will be eligible to apply for jobs back in India. So that's going to be fine. So it's definitely fine to pursue masters in India and then come abroad for PhD. Ma'am, is there any scope for jobs in biotech field outside laboratory? Outside laboratory, if you're not interested in working in the lab environment, you could start thinking about a bioinformatics post, like getting trained in softwares. Like at present, people who work with Python, who work with softwares like R is like it's in demand now for the research and for any kind of research. People who know R programming, they are hired. So there is always a scope for doing job outside laboratory, whereas with fitting within the research environment itself, but not attending or going to the lab on a daily basis, you could get trained as a bioinformatician. Now, another thing is that you could work as like a science reporter. Writing reports for magazines, science reports, or some kind of media like the television or somewhere like science reporters, you could start thinking about that. And then there is, but even with people with a general degree can turn into that. It's not required that you do a biotech degree for that. People who are working or studying some kind of journalism can change their career at some point to being like in the reporting science. So you will have to have some knowledge about how you report the science or the research, but as a science reporter, you could work. And then another thing is so many people do this in India now, the medical transcription. That's another thing, but that also does not require a biotech degree. So there are opportunities like that outside the research lab. But if you're doing a biotechnology, and you could go into teaching at any point, like you could just become a lecturer, just doing the lecturer job. But abroad, if you have to get trained as a lecturer, you have to think realistically, it's going to be a very different teaching environment from what you have in India. So you will have to have some training for becoming a lecturer abroad. It's going to be a very different scenario. The method of teaching is different in colleges or universities abroad. It's not like just you prepare the notes or just you give a lecture. There are more like valuations to do, more things to assess the student. Individually, you have to assess each student and then write or value that, like evaluate the experiences. So it's like a very different lecturing job abroad. So if you want to get into teaching, of course, you could get into teaching. That's outside the research lab. I mean, you don't have to take any responsibility of a research project, but as a lecturer or a teacher, you would be expected to have some knowledge about the research lab, because you might have to give practical sessions as part of the teaching. And then what else? Yeah, you could become like for magazines, for the journals, you could become editors of, but editors will be chosen by the magazine, like who would be like experienced in that particular field. But as part of the journal publication process, people always look for people who have experience in that biological sciences research. Like if you submit an article for publication, there is the pre-processing that people do. So for that, they hire people who have experience with or you have done studies in biological research. So that sort of jobs you can find out. Yeah, that's it. But mostly if you are doing a biotech degree, it will be something related to research lab. Other than that, what I could think of is just the science reports. Ma'am, is it okay to pursue masters from India and PhD? Yeah, that's it. I think that's it. I think I've answered most of the questions that's written here. And if you have got any doubts, please feel free to get in touch with me. I can send my email address and I can help with whatever way I can. And if you have any other questions or doubts, you can ask.
Smija, one more question is there. In your
Yeah.
opinion, which is better after BSc, MSc or MS?
I mean, if you're coming abroad, if you would like to carry on as a researcher, or if your interest is in pursuing a PhD, I would say that an MRS is more valuable. But the thing is that the MRS course has a higher fee compared to the MSc course. So if you want to come abroad for a master's and continue as a researcher, an MRS is more valuable than an MSc course. Just a taught master's course, compared to that, an MRS is always valuable, more valuable. But the fee is much higher.
Thank you, ma'am. I think almost all the queries were cleared by our speaker. Now it's time to wind up our session. I invite Dr. Ranjisha Menon, Assistant Professor, Department of Biotechnology, to deliver the vote of thanks. Ma'am, please.
Thank you, Elsa. It's my honor to give a vote of thanks on the final talk of our international webinar series, Biotechnology, the Present and Future Scenario. On behalf of the Biotechnology Department, I would like to extend our deep gratitude to our resource person, Dr. SMIJA Mariam Kurian, for her explanatory talk on career options on biological research abroad. Hope you all had a good time with the session. In the recent years, most of the bioscience students are seeking their higher studies and opting jobs abroad. The webinar provided an extensive and valuable awareness among the students about the research and career opportunities in abroad, and the talk will definitely help to build their bright future. Thank you once again, Smija, for sparing your valuable time with us and for the well-structured presentation. Now, I take this opportunity to express. Okay. Now I take this opportunity to express my sincere gratitude to our principal, Dr. A. Suresh, for the constant encouragement and support rendered in the successful conduct of this webinar series. I would also express my thanks to our management for the continuous support. Now, I would like to thank IQAC coordinator Dr. Priti Nair for her passionate support to organize the event. Dr. Valsa AK, who has always been there for us in every effort. I extend my sincere thanks to you, ma'am. After all, I would like to thank my colleagues and staff members who had worked hard for conducting this international webinar series. I am very happy to thank all the students and other faculty members who actively participated in the webinar and made it a great success. Once again, thank you all for making this series a memorable one. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, ma'am. Dear participants, we are once again reminding you all to fill now after the session. It's time to wind up our webinar series for the year 2021-2022. Thank you for being a fabulous audience and supporting us with your cooperation. I hope that every one of you have enjoyed the webinar series. Looking forward to see you all next time. Thank you and have a great day ahead.